Hi, and welcome back to the Raid Files. Today, we're talking about securing AI agents. And I know that sentence alone is already a bit much because if you've tried to get your head around this space recently, you'll know exactly what happens. You start with one blog post that links to an OWASP document, that links to another framework, that references a regulatory landscape. And before you know it, you've got 10 PDFs open, a half-finished coffee, and somehow you're still not sure where to start. So in this video, we're going to keep it practical. We're not going to pretend agentic AI security is solved. It isn't. The rules are still being written, the frameworks are still being updated, and a lot of very smart people are still working this out in public. And that is actually the first thing I want to say clearly. If this feels messy inside of your org, you are not behind. Even the teams at the frontier are still learning here. Anthropic, for example, published a really interesting blog about how they contain Claude across different products and how that containment has failed more than once. And the reason I think it's worth mentioning is not to criticize them. Actually, it's the opposite. It's because they are being open about the fact that containing agents is hard. Different products need different containment models. Agent access creates different blast radius problems, and human approval alone is not enough. That kind of transparency is useful because it reminds everyone else that this is not just a problem for companies new to AI. It's a genuinely difficult shift. So in today's video, we're breaking things down into 3 questions leaders should be asking about AI agents and a 90-day plan for starting to secure your agents, one that you can take back and hand over to your teams today. We'll dive into the details in just a second, but before that, let's quickly define what makes agents different. A lot of AI security discussion has focused on chatbots and LLMs so far. Those are still important, but agents change the shape of the problem because they do not just answer, they act. A simple LLM chatbot might simply summarize a document, but an agent might read that document, decide what needs to happen next, call a tool, update a ticket, write code, or trigger another workflow. The risk is not just the model, it's the model plus the tools, permissions, memory, integrations, and autonomy. That combination is what makes agentic AI useful and is also what makes governing it so hard. And that matters because agents are increasingly being connected to real business environments, from software like Slack or GitHub to accessing internal documents, emails, cloud accounts, and customer records, running CI/CD pipelines. There really isn't a lot of the professional landscape that agents haven't touched. And with prompt injection still an unsolved factor, the likelihood an agent will be coerced to misbehave is very high, making agentic security even more pressing. So let's get into it. The 3 questions you should look to answer to begin securing your agentic AI portfolio. Question 1. What agents do we have and how autonomous are they? This sounds basic, but don't most things before you actually try and do them. I guarantee you this will surprise you because agentic AI may already be more present in your company than your governance process assumes. There are the obvious agents, the ones that have been formally approved, procured, and rolled out by the business. But then there are also coding agents that are used by developers, vendor agents added into tools you already pay for, low-code agents built by teams outside of engineering, internal experiments that started as prototypes and quietly became useful, personal agents running on work devices, and then the really difficult category, things people don't even think of as agents anymore because they've just become part of how work gets done. And of course, many of these are often lurking as shadow AI. And let me be clear, this is not a criticism. It's just what happens when a technology becomes useful quickly. So aside from reviewing what's already been documented, it's worth digging deep with your teams to understand what they really use. There are also companies whose products can help you with this. So the first step is visibility. Once you know what agents exist in your organization, it's helpful to classify them to see where the majority of your agentic capability sits. This is when the OWASP Agent taxonomy can come in handy. What you're looking at is a simple framework for classifying any AI agent across 3 stacked dimensions: agent type, implementation pattern, and composition pattern. Think of each row as a different lens. The first tells you what the agent does. The second tells you how it was built. And the third tells you how it sits alongside other agents. And each of these choices has a concrete security implication. The implementation pattern, for example, determines your audit service. The composition pattern determines your trust boundaries, and so on. Then, cutting across all of that is autonomy. The autonomy level, which runs along the bottom as a spectrum. And this is really the so what of the whole diagram. The more autonomous your agent, the more it can act without a human in the loop, the higher the risk, and the more your security requirements escalate. Regardless of how you do it, the output of this question should be some kind of agent register. It doesn't need to be perfect on day one, but you want a list of agents, owners, business purpose, systems accessed, implementation type, level of autonomy, and whether these are approved, experimental, vendor provided, or simply unknown. Because you cannot secure what you cannot see. On to question 2. If our highest risk agent misbehaved tomorrow, would we know and could we stop it? I like this question because it cuts through a lot of abstract discussion. It moves the conversation from are agents risky to are we prepared for the agents we are actually running? As we mentioned earlier, prompt injection is still an unsolved problem, so the likelihood your agent will be coerced into doing something they shouldn't be is pretty high. And if that did happen, could you tell? Is there monitoring and alerting in place to notify of strange behavior? Do you have guardrails or safety mechanisms that could block certain actions and raise an alert? Is there enough observability that we could reconstruct what happened? Could we see what prompt, tool call, file, API, memory entry, or external input influenced this? Could we tell which systems it touched? Could we pause it quickly? Could we revoke its credentials? Could we stop it talking to other agents? All of these questions come to mind, and they're a great starting point. And here are a few more that can help you to get the governance conversation going. The OWASP Agentic Top 10 helps here because it gives examples of the types of things you are trying to prepare for. Things like agent goal hijack, where a malicious input changes what the agent is trying to achieve, or tool misuse. Just because an agent can use a tool doesn't mean every tool use is safe, all the way to already familiar concepts like identity and privilege abuse. Question 3. Which framework are we measuring ourselves against and what does it miss? This is where I think leaders need to be quite careful. Frameworks are useful, standards are useful, mappings are useful, but compliance and coverage are not the same thing, especially in an area as fast-moving as agentic AI. You can have control that maps to a risk without that control being sufficient to fully mitigate the risk. And to OWASP's credit, some of the recent work in this space is very open about that. The AIUC1 to OWASP Agentic Top 10 crosswalk is a very good example. It maps AIUC1's requirements to OWASP Agentic threats, and it helps teams understand which requirements are relevant to which risks. But one of the most useful parts is that it also calls out the gaps. That is the right mindset. A mature approach is not, we have a framework, so we are done here. It's, we have a framework, we understand what it covers, and we understand where it may not be enough. The crosswalk groups some of the gaps into themes that I think are very useful for leaders. The first is agent identity and inter-agent communication. In plain English, how do agents prove who they are, especially when they talk to other agents or systems? This matters because companies are used to thinking about human users and service accounts. Agents are something slightly different, though. They can act, delegate, call tools, and operate across workflows, so identity needs to catch up. The second theme is architectural containment and runtime monitoring. AKA, if the agent starts doing the wrong thing, Are there circuit breakers, blast radius limits, monitoring, and ways to stop it? Again, this is not exotic security thinking. It is familiar operational discipline applied to a new kind of system. And the third theme is supply chain attestation and schema controls, aka, do we know what tools, prompts, dependencies, models, plugins, and external components the agents rely on, and are those controlled? This is especially important as agents start to use third-party tools and protocols. The agent may be yours, but parts of the workflow may come from somewhere else. So when a team says we are aligned to a framework, the follow-up should be, which one? Against which agents? At what level of autonomy? What risks does it cover? Where are the gaps? And who is responsible for closing or accepting those gaps? That is not about being negative. It's about being honest. Every framework in this space is going to evolve. Your governance process should expect that. So the natural question follows, what do you actually do with all of this? I'd turn these 3 questions into a 90-day starting plan. Not a 90-day plan to become secure. That would be too neat and probably not true. This is a 90-day plan to get oriented, build a baseline, and start reducing the most obvious risks. In weeks 1 to 4, get to know what you have. Start with inventory. List the agents you know about and ask your teams to share what they're using. Shadow AI is where your biggest risks may be hiding. Then classify them. Use the OWASP agent taxonomy from earlier, or simply use these questions to guide you. In weeks 5 to 8, understand what needs fixing. Take the highest risk agents from your register and go deeper. Start with the ones that have the most autonomy, the broadest access, or the highest business impact. For each one, ask these questions. This is also where you can start comparing against OWASP's top 10. Not as a box-ticking exercise, but as a way to ask which of these risk categories apply to this agent. Goal hijack, tool misuse. Check them out and get to know them well. Remember, you don't need every answer immediately, but you should know where the uncomfortable blanks are. In weeks 9 to 12, that is where the action is. Fix, formalize, and review. Start with the basics like least privilege, reduce what the agent can access. Least agency, reduce how much autonomy it has where autonomy may not be needed. Or tool controls, limit which tools can be called and under what conditions. I'll pop a couple more on the screen too. And review cadence. Come back to this regularly. Quarterly is a sensible starting point because the guidance is changing, the tools are changing, and your own usage is probably changing faster than you think. So to bring this together, agentic AI security is not about making people feel behind. Most organizations are still figuring this out. Even the people building the frontier tools are still refining containment models, publishing lessons, and learning from real deployments. The goal is not perfection, it's to move from invisible to visible. Ask the 3 questions, kick off the 90-day plan, and share what you learn along the way. That is everything for this one. As always, sources are down in the description. If you found it useful, please subscribe, and there's more of this coming, so I'll see you in the next one.